Sure, sure. So, Melanie Hall is the CEO of Hospice of Huntington, and she also plays a role in the West Virginia Hospice Council. She and I have been talking the past couple weeks about the CON issue for healthcare, specifically for hospice, but Melanie has a great background. She's very passionate about what she does, and we're happy to have her here this morning.
Melanie, good morning. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
We just had a conversation with Delegate Michael Height about Certificate of Need and what the future of it is in West Virginia as it pertains to the various facets of health care. And Mike said, I'm a data-driven person. I want to see the studies. What are the end results of Certificate of Need being in place or repealed? They want to look at other states' data and determine from that what they're going to do. Now, we've spoken now with 4 delegates around the states. 2 of them very much opposed to CON repeal, 1 very much for it in regards to health care, and Mike, who said, my mind will be made up by the data. What can you tell us, Melanie, about why Hospice of the Panhandle should continue to get a Certificate of Need?
Well, hospice in general.
Sorry.
That's okay.
That's a habit right there.
It is a habit. Yeah. Good for you.
Why Hospice should continue to get an exemption with Certificate of Need?
Absolutely. And I'll just, from my perspective as the chair of the Hospice Council of West Virginia and as a nurse, I want to share a little bit, kind of look at the big picture and then come down specifically for hospice. When we look at Certificate of Need, we look across the nation, and again, 35 states in the United States, and a lot of them are concentrated in our Mid-Atlantic area, have Certificate of Need, and of some sort. So when you say Certificate of Need, it's a big umbrella, but not everything is involved in Certificate of Need. And so when you look at the West Virginia Healthcare Authority website, you can see a list of those services, those medical services that are under Certificate of Need. And so not everything is under Certificate of Need. A physician can come in and open a private practice and practice in West Virginia without a Certificate of Need. There are lots of things that are not Certificate of Need, but there are some things that are. And most of the states in the nation have some kind of healthcare laws, and that's because healthcare has a payer arrangement with an insurance, third-party insurance payer that makes it different than free market. Free market is just I pay you cash for the goods and that. Because there is the insurance piece to it with healthcare, it makes it operate a little bit more like a commodity than it is a free market. So the economics of healthcare are very complicated, and they have some federal legislation that also comes into play. So to say I want to see the data on Certificate of Need, I think that's absolutely critical. But we almost have to look at the data for each individual item that is under Certificate of Need because the data is different, somewhat different for each of those. And the need methodologies and the standards and the quality measures with which they hold for each of those are a little bit different. And so to take time and examine and really work on and make each of those elements under the Certificate of Need function to their highest quality to benefit West Virginia, it takes time. It takes some examination and it takes some detailed work. But I would encourage someone who's looking at that decision for whether we're going to repeal or keep CON to make sure that we're doing it in a very thoughtful way to really examine each of those elements because each is a little different. And I'll use hospice as an example. For our hospice in West Virginia, we serve every county in West Virginia. We are consistently 3rd, 4th, 5th best in the nation. And that's due to the fact that we have quality that is tied into our measures for Certificate of Need. We have to be held accountable that we're serving people in every county, so we can't just take the Certificate of Need and do what we want and not serve everybody. We have to serve everybody. So our quality in the nation for a state that has a Certificate of Need for hospice is one of the best in the nation. And when you look at what states have Certificate of Needs and how they're functioning as far as hospice, their quality and their service is much better than when it's a free-for-all. And an example of that is California. California went free-for-all many years ago. I've been in hospice 10 years and saw during that time the rampant free-for-all that happened in some states. And now they're trying to pull that back because they saw a tremendous amount of fraud and abuse and happening, and people just buying hospices and turning around and selling them for a profit and no patient care or poor patient care. And so California has actually put a moratorium on hospices, and the state, as part of and as well as the national focus, has been to put a hospice special focus into play for finding the bad actors who have, when things were lifted, the repeals were lifted, and everybody runs in. They're having to ratchet that back and begin to look at those that are getting fined, look at those that are opening too frequently, or looking at those that are problems. So West Virginia has been protected from that. The Certificate of Need has protected us from a lot of fraud and abuse in the hospice space because of the guardrails with which we put together. But it also has the power to make sure that the quality and the service is there for every West Virginian. And so for hospice, we certainly hope the Certificate of Need is not repealed, that it is preserved. But for hospice, we believe that the Certificate of Need for hospice needs to remain because it has demonstrated quality and it has demonstrated service to all throughout the state of West Virginia.
Bill?
Yeah, good morning, Melanie. I'm on the board, the local board for hospice, so my views are obviously somewhat biased or prejudiced in favor of a certificate of need. But our previous guest, Delegate Mike Height, said he was going to be data-driven. One of the guests that one of the groups that testified yesterday and has actually been on our radio show on several occasions is the Cardinal Institute. They pride themselves with providing data. Have you looked at their data, and are you supportive of the data, or can you find criticism of the data? Speak to the data, if you will. Their data.
Sure. I appreciate the data collection, and I think that is an important piece. And I will say again, data collection can be broad or it can be specific. And so I've not seen specifically their data collection related to hospices. She mentioned something in general, but the hospice information, I think it was kind of broad general information that I was presented, and so I would welcome the opportunity to look at her specific hospice data. But we have to make sure that we're not looking at certificate need and data all in one lump sum. It needs to be looked at in each individual measure. And sometimes data can say what you want to say, but we do need to have the opportunity that we're all measuring the same thing and all speaking to the same thing as far as what data we are talking about, because there are nuances with how you collect data as far as how you want it to share your information. So I would welcome the opportunity to look at their specific data for hospice and how that was collected, and look at that against our data.
Are you making this point to the legislators?
We're doing all we can to educate as many legislators as possible, because it is a challenge to, to make sure you're communicating. It's a difficult, complex topic, and so we want to make sure that we're trying to share as much of the information and make it as clear as possible as they're trying to make decisions.
Did you offer a presentation yesterday?
We did offer a presentation in advance. We did offer the opportunity to present specifically on hospice yesterday, but their agenda was full, and they promised they would try to get us in a different format to provide education. So we're hoping that happens.
So, Melanie, talk a little bit about some of our listeners on our Facebook feed are asking about just the CON piece. We're talking about this big umbrella of CON for health care. So you mentioned that a doctor doesn't have to apply for a CON. What are the types of things that fall under the CON umbrella, so to speak?
Yes, and I will actually read the list from the West Virginia. If you go to West Virginia Healthcare Authority's website, which is the governing body that is responsible for managing the certificate of need. When you go to their website and they list the certificate of need organizations, you see things like CT scans, cardiac surgery services, hospice services, cardiac catheterization, megavolt radiation therapy services, addition of acute care beds, renovation or replacement acute care facilities, ambulatory care centers, PET scans, MRIs, not birthing centers, I think that changed last year, home health services, behavioral health, developmental disability, in-home personal care, in-stage renal disease, rehab facilities, operating rooms, statement on organ transplant, statement on emergency technology, transplant services, neonatal intensive care units, and ICF ID. So those are the list of services that fall under certificate of need. Like I said, opening a private doctor's office is not one of them. You can open up a private business, but these are services that have Medicaid reimbursement attached to them, and in some capacity sometimes. And that is also a factor because Medicaid only has so much money to pay for certain things, and so they also put that through as a mechanism for what falls under certificate of need and what does not.
Melanie Hall is our guest. She is the president of the West Virginia Hospice Council and the CEO of Hospice of Huntington. Are there any counties in West Virginia where there is more than one hospice provider? Melanie, are you aware?
Yes, some counties have multiple ones. Some counties have single ones, and that's based on the need methodology on the certificate of need. For hospice, we have arrangements if someone, for some reason, doesn't like or can't be cared for by the hospice. That's part of our need methodology, that we have an arrangement where they can receive care in the neighboring county. But that is part of the need methodology. And then also part of that methodology is that the requirement for the county that maybe only has one, that they have to serve all the need in that county. So they can't just say, I want to serve a few, or I want to serve this area but not this area. They're required to serve the whole county. So if they're the single holder of a certificate, they have to serve everybody in that county.
And those hospices are competing hospices, not just a second branch opening of the initial hospice, correct?
Correct, yes.
What does a business have to do to be able to call themselves and qualify as a hospice? Can anybody just open up and call themselves a hospice?
So in order to open up as a hospice, they have to register. They have to register with the Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, which is a federal agency, and that would be how they would be recognized. They have a federal tax ID number, but then they have to apply to the Center for Medicaid and Medicare to be allowed to have be paid by Medicare or Medicaid. Obviously, they have to have state licensure, state business licensure, and those types of things. But their primary designation means that they need to make sure that they are federally qualified as a hospice provider in West Virginia. They have to go through the state licensing process, which is through the Office of Health Facilities and Licensure, which is OFLAC. And OFLAC process is the process with which a business or a company is deemed safe to be serving as a hospice. And once they're licensed with OFLAC, part of the OFLAC process is to be falling within the certificate of need. So you have to show that there is a need, and that OFLAC says, yes, you're safe to be a hospice. You're registered with the federal entities to provide Medicare, Medicaid services, and then you receive state survey, and you're surveyed on a regular basis to make sure you're meeting those standards.
Melanie, I applaud those delegates or the representatives who make the decision based upon data presented. A lot of folks do not, though. A lot of folks
Right.
make their decision based upon their emotional tie. And
Right.
in the case of CON for the medical services, it kind of defaults to the hospital. And the hospice kind of follows along with someone's attitude toward a hospital. How big a lift do the hospitals have to go right now with convincing the legislators that they are providing the best product possible for the dollars being presented?
And Bill, you specifically said hospitals. Did you mean hospice or hospitals?
Hospitals.
Hospitals. Are you qualified to
Hospitals.
answer that question too,
Well,
Melanie?
Well, I'm not going to speak for the hospitals, but certainly I think, the hospitals tend to be the ones that people think of when they think of certificate of need. But just as I read the list, you can see that it's not only inpatient services with the hospitals, but several outpatient services as well. And so we work together. You have to work together in healthcare to take care of people while they're in the hospital as well as in a home. So we want to make sure we're all communicating well. But certainly I'm not qualified to speak for hospitals. I think they've got certainly a big challenge to take care of us, and I will leave that to them to describe what they're doing to educate legislators. I understand they certainly do want to retain the CON, and I think they've probably got data and information to support that. And I certainly would encourage anybody to talk with their representatives about that. But I think what happens is people are users of healthcare in their communities, and like you said, I think they typically default to the hospital, and it's easy to get mad at somebody that you maybe don't understand or you don't feel like you're getting what you need. But I would say this. Certificate of Need provides a big opportunity for us to improve the healthcare delivery, the healthcare quality measures, and the healthcare access in our community. And if we throw that away by repealing the Certificate of Need, whether you're talking about hospitals or whether you're talking about hospice, if we throw that opportunity away, it will be very, very difficult, more difficult, to get those measures and those satisfaction pieces fixed than it will be if we just say, forget it, throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's just all go free market. And that's the emotional reaction to do. Forget it. Let's just go free market and see what happens. Well, see what happens brings a lot of fallout and a lot of negative fallout and a lot of damage and hurt and uncared for people. And so it is a very thoughtful legislator that will take the time to really listen to all sides of the argument and look at the data and talk to those that are providing the care in the state right now and look at what's happening nationwide. And let's look at the data that's equal data and then talk about it and then find what the best solution is for West Virginia.
Rob's point's well taken that I think that hospitals are going to be driving this discussion and the hospice will be following along. With that in mind, is the carve out for hospice realistic in this particular environment?
Well, I will say this. The Hospice Council of West Virginia is being very active in advocating for our services. Most of our services are taking place in the home, so we're not riding on the coattails of the hospital. We have to advocate for ourselves because we have to explain our own services and our own quality and how we're doing. And so, yes, we are asking, please retain the Certificate of Need, but if you can't feel like you do that, please listen to why we feel like we need it for hospice. And we're providing data information in that. So we're not riding the coattails. We're trying to make sure we're educating. Every group should be trying to educate as much as possible because it's a lot of information to take in. So we're trying to make sure we're definitely at least advocating and speaking for our needs within hospice.
Melanie, I want to read a comment to you from one of our viewers on our Facebook live stream, Jeff Haddix. Mm-hmm. He said, in Fairmont, we had 3 hospices to choose from. It would only make sense that the Eastern Panhandle have more to offer, choice across 3 or 4 counties, because this particular hospice here serves 3 counties of the far Eastern Panhandle. 4, is that Hampshire as well, Maria?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, 4
and
too.
Hampshire is served also by Grant Memorial Hospice. So we do have another hospice that operates in the 4-county area. But go ahead, Melanie. You're the expert.
Okay. You're finishing the question?
Yeah.
That was it. Would it not make sense for the Eastern Panhandle, with three, especially two of which are fairly well populated, to have more than one choice of hospice or access to more than one hospice for this area, which has 200,000 plus people?
So the question is whether it makes sense or not is based on the need methodology with which the certificate of need is, and the reason does it make sense? I think you have to find where is the defining line. If you say 2, does somebody come back and say, no, we need 3, no, we need 7, no, we need 10? You have to have a basis with which you make that decision. And the basis with which that decision is made currently, which I think is a very rational decision, is based on the need methodology. And it's based on population, the population that will utilize hospice services. Not everyone who passes utilizes hospice services. Many are car accidents, or as we saw more recently, substance abuse overdoses. Those are folks that will never come to hospice because the way they die, the way they pass, is not something that has time attached to it that they can enroll in hospice. So when you get down to determining the need, it isn't always just based on the number of people that live there. It's also based on the number of people who use those types of services. And so part of the certificate of need begins to filter all that out and figure out how many people who will utilize that service in this geographic area and whatever. If someone is not happy with that, or they feel like that is not satisfactory, then that's an opportunity to go back to the certificate of needs, the needs and methodologies and the standards, and communicate and work on that.
Melanie, I want to thank you very much for your time this morning. You are a source of great information, and I think very well communicated. My last question for you is, are you giving out gift boxes today like Maria did up here in the Panhandle?
Am I giving out gifts? Do I need to get more Cheetos? Is that
That's it.
I'm gonna have to go get my Cheetos and get going.
Okay.
Get some Cheetos indeed. Thank you so much. We appreciate your time this morning.
Oh,
Thanks, man.
thanks for having me. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.